Guys, good to be with you. A tremendous amount to get to. I'm Tony Katz. This is Tony Katz. Today we are smoking from DBL, the Amarillo, which is a box press with a really kind of fantastic barber pole. You can feel the La Flor Dominicana influence. Just feel it in the wrapper. Never mind the look of the wrapper. They want to talk garbage. We're going to make it a wall-to-wall story. That's going to be top of the show, which is starting right now. Let's get to it. Wall-to-wall coverage, ladies and gentlemen. We will not let you down here at Tony Katz Today. That's the name of the show, by the way, in case you didn't know. Wall-to-wall coverage. I was told that after a joke about Puerto Rico by comic Tony Hinchcliffe, we needed wall-to-wall coverage. 24/7 coverage of the joke that fell flat that Donald Trump didn't tell and wasn't even in the place where it happened. Okay, he got there later. That was my point. He was, of course, there. He could say anything about it he chooses, and he has. Didn't know the guy, didn't know the joke, didn't like the joke. They put out a statement that evening. They didn't like the joke. 3 days of nonstop coverage. 3 nonstop coverage days that Trump was somehow at fault for something that was said by someone at the event. I don't think you maybe even should have had him at the event. I think that's a logical conversation to have. But he was there. People laughed at all the other stuff. Jewish jokes they laughed at. Palestinian jokes they laughed at. The Puerto Rico joke, hey, we can make political hay out of this. Let's go. And by the way, it was a bad joke. Tony Katz Today, if I didn't say hello already. Well, now, turnabout is fair play. Because if somebody who is a surrogate, if you will, if somebody who is a speaker at a Trump event, therefore speaking on behalf of the president, can engage a 3-day level of coverage, then clearly so can this from the president of the United States.
Listen, I think
that's not the president of the United States. This is.
Or Puerto Rico, where I'm in my home state of Delaware. They're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. His demonization is seen as unconscionable. And it's un-American.
Yeah.
Puerto Rico.
You just called Trump supporters garbage. He called Trump supporters garbage. He did what he did. Now, they try and make it sound like, no, you don't understand. He didn't call Trump supporters garbage. He called what it is they've been talking about as garbage. It's all about an apostrophe, ladies and gentlemen. This is quite literally what the White House wanted to put out. The White House put out that the president was not discussing in any way, shape, or form, was not discussing the actual people, was talking about what it is the people were talking about. If you don't believe me, I mean, this is on from whitehouse.gov. You can't make this stuff up at all. This is what they did. They took the president's words and they said, no, he didn't say what it is he said. You could read it. The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters, apostrophe S. That's not the first version that came from whitehouse.gov. That was the second version. The first version had no apostrophe. None. The first version is how he actually said it. The second version is how the White House tried to cover it up. By the way, there's something called the Presidential Records Act, and this is a violation of it. You can't change a transcript, and that's exactly what they did in the Biden White House. But when I tell you this requires coverage, I'm talking about bring on the breaking news sounder. We have one right here, hot off of the presses, the Tony Katz Today breaking news sounder.
What would Brian Boitano do if he was here right now? He'd make a plan and he'd follow through. That's what Brian Boitano do. What would Brian Boitano do if he were here today?
I'm pretty sure that's South Park.
That's what Brian Boitano do. What Brian Boitano do if he...
That's not us. I'm sorry. That is not our news sounder there for Joe Biden referring to Americans as garbage. Here it is right here. I'm sorry. no, that's not it. No, that's not it. Showroom, that's not it. We're going to have to get that all worked out. Ladies and gentlemen, if a supporter saying something can garner 3 days worth of news coverage, then clearly the president, being that supporter, can garner 3 days worth of news coverage. He referred to half of America as garbage. Now, I get what some of you are saying. I already see the posts coming across at Tony Katz there on the Twitter X. I still think he's trying to sabotage Kamala. Oh, you may be very well right. This is a Joe Biden who realized that maybe he'd still be the stronger candidate against Donald Trump, that Kamala Harris is not good at this at all. As a matter of fact, Kamala Harris, you think that she's speaking out against it? No. She's trying to move past it.
President Biden took his comment last night about garbage.
Listen, I think that, first of all, he clarified his comments, but let me be clear. I strongly disagree with any criticism of people based on who they vote for.
Wait a second. He clarified his comments. Over at CNN, we were told that his comments to a group called Voto Latino via a Zoom, a live stream, that he's got a stutter, and clearly he meant apostrophe S. Like you could tell, right? Because he has a stutter, you could therefore somehow make some excuse for him. The man may have had a stutter in his past, but there's nothing about that going on right now. He thinks that you are garbage if you support Donald Trump. If you disagree with him, he thinks you are garbage. He has been, Joe Biden, his entire career, a nasty son of a you-know-what. He has always been a terrible person, mean-spirited, nasty. Just take a look at what he did to Clarence Thomas. Nobody would accept that. And let me say that all those commentators on CNN would be disgusted if he did that to anybody else. But if you say that stuff to Clarence Thomas, that's okay. You see, Clarence Thomas to them is not actually a black man. When you treat him so horrifically, he's a conservative, and therefore he deserves everything he gets. He's a traitor after all. That's their view of the world. And I'm willing to go on CNN and say that to them. Invite me anytime, right? No beeper jokes, but I will say that because it's absolutely factual. The very idea that Joe Biden was stuttering or something, bunch of hooey. He said what he said. And I want it understood that what Kamala Harris said right there, what she's saying right there, is that she concedes that's what he said. He clarified it. He called Americans garbage. The president of the United States. But let her go on.
You heard my speech last night and continuously throughout my career. I believe that the work that I do is about representing all the people, whether they support me or not. And as President of the United States, I will be a president for all Americans, whether you vote for me or not. That is my responsibility, and that's the kind of work that I've done my entire.
So she's going to avoid the whole subject all together. But what about people who are offended?
Do you sympathize with any voters who do feel offended by or insulted by the garbage comments?
I am running for president of the United States. I will be traveling to 3 states today.
Nobody asks if you're traveling to 3 states. No one cares, Kamala Harris, that you're traveling to 3 states. Why are you avoiding this? What about those people who were offended by being called garbage? You keep talking about wanting to reach across, wanting to grab people, get those Trump supporters. You campaign with Liz Cheney like you think it matters. But these people just got called garbage because they're not sure. And you've got nothing to say?
To do what I have been doing.
Not that one. How about this one?
Are you concerned about what impact this may have on voters, on the divisiveness of the election, and whether or not it's going to dissuade some people from supporting you because of your affiliation with the president and this administration?
I've been very clear with the American public. I respect the challenges that people face. I respect the fact that we all have so much more in common than what separates us. and that most people want a president that understands that gets that, and approaches their role of leadership that way. I've been very clear from my earliest years as a prosecutor.
You, in your earliest days in a prosecutor, kept people in jail longer than they need to be. You went after specifically and targeted Black Americans. Then you thought it was okay to tell people who make a claim of transgenderism they can have taxpayer-funded surgeries while they are in jail. You sat there for all the big decisions in the White House. Before getting to the White House, you referred to Joe Biden as a segregationist. Then you get to the White House. You're there for all the big decisions. You okay all the big decisions. You are such a goof that they put you on the most back burner. They claim you're the border czar. You never go to the border until you're running for president. And now you're there for everybody. You know what? I don't actually care what Kamala Harris says at all. It doesn't mean anything to me. And I don't think it should mean anything to you. I think we should be into this story, though. This is the biggest story in America. That the president of the United States just referred to the citizens that he allegedly represents as garbage. And it requires 3 days of nonstop coverage. CNN and MSNBC and the New York Times and the Washington Post, Politico. Oh, Politico. My God. It's like you're practicing being just terrible. They need to be covering this for 3 days, non-stop coverage, because that's what it requires. Because that's what we did to Tony Hinchcliffe and a really bad joke about Puerto Rico. This is the president. We hold the president to a different standard than a guy who hosts a podcast called Kill Tony. If we don't, we're pretty screwed up. If what Tony Hinchcliffe said is the most horrible thing in the world because Trump is connected to it, and what Joe Biden said is, well, there was an apostrophe, so it's fine. I swear, if anybody watches media again, you're out of your heads. You're out of your mind. I mean, the argument now is so profound for shutting all of that down. Turn it off. There is no point. There is no value. Did you know that NPR didn't even cover it? In their morning programming, they did not cover this story at all. The White House is trying to rewrite what it is that got said. NPR is not covering it in the slightest. The New York Times had a headline, Biden appears to insult Trump supporters as garbage. Appears. That's what we're going with. And then you've got Politico, as I mentioned. Jonathan Lemire, gross what you're doing, Jonathan. I know MSNBC must pay really, really good. Do you remember when Morning Joe was the intellectual morning show? They had guys like Noah Rothman on the show. Yeah, replaced guys like him with Molly Jong-Fast and more Jonathan Lemire. And this is exactly the problem. And I don't mean to throw Noah into a bad place with any colleagues that he might still work with over there. They wrote in Politico, Biden, in a Zoom call with the organization Voto Latino, said, quote, the only garbage, unquote, was the, quote, hatred, unquote, of Trump supporters who said such things about American citizens. But that's not what it is Biden said. Is it?
Or Puerto Rico, where I'm in my home state of Delaware, they're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is just supporters.
There was nothing about hatred. Was there?
His demonization of seen as unconscionable, and it's un-American.
Yeah, he didn't say hatred, but Politico threw that in there. They completely misrepresented what he said to engage protection. As I've been asking some people that I do work with who follow the politics with maybe even a level of more intensity, why are we still looking to Politico playbook as something that's worthwhile? Why do we pay attention to any of these people? It's time to cast them aside. They lie. They took a story that's not a story and made it a 3-day story. And then they take a story that is a story, the president of the United States referring to citizens as garbage, and they lie about it. They manipulate the record, lie to their listeners, to their readers, and then try and move on. Nah. 3 days, nonstop coverage. I'm going to talk about this for the next 3 days. What else is there to talk about? What could possibly be more important than this? There are people out there who will tell you, oh, you're being silly. Oh, they are garbage. Well, you should at least know who they are. You should know who they are, about how they view their politics and how they view other people. They don't view you as someone they may disagree with. They view you as something that is trash and needs to be thrown out and destroyed, dehumanized, and all that jazz. They're so interested in dehumanizing the political right. You would think they were all related to Linda Sarsour. Well, that's a good joke. That's world class. 3 days of coverage is coming. Joe Biden thinks that you are garbage. I'm sorry. I take that back. That's my apologies. Kamala Harris thinks that you are garbage. What? Harris was speaking. Biden was speaking for Harris, like Hinchcliffe was speaking for Trump. And since Biden was speaking for Harris, clearly this is on Harris. So Harris called the American people garbage who are favoring Donald Trump. Therefore, Harris called the American people garbage. Those are the rules. That's how this works. And that's exactly how we're going to play it. And those in media who don't, well, now we know who's really honest and who isn't, in case you didn't know before. I'm Tony Katz, and this is Tony Katz Today. Yeah, I think it's hard to do the show and have this cigar at the same time, but I'm going to keep trying. Let me get to the comments. I do love good comments. No beep. Oh, come on, Laura. No beeper jokes from me. Wait. Something tells me Biden doesn't know many good and decent people. He spent too long in politics. Well, that's very, very possible. Dirty word alert coming. Here's Todd. You're blanking trash, Tony Katz. And Republicans are trash. The vomit you guys spew every day is what's wrong with America. I mean, we all agree that Todd is not engaged in what we would call a nice conversation. Todd, if I saved a puppy from drowning, Todd would complain that I got the sidewalk wet. Right? That's Todd. That's Todd. Biden was wrong. Biden was wrong. I think communists are what's wrong with the country. I just think the left is mistaken in what they politically value. That's it. I do think there are people who are interested in the Constitution as is, and I think there are people who are interested in ripping it asunder, and I disagree. I think it's the left that's interested in ripping it asunder, and I think they're wrong, and my job is to convince people of why, and why these policies are better than those policies. And sometimes I disagree with these policies, like, for example, tariffs. Disagree. But tariffs to replace income tax? Well, now, kitten. Now we got ourselves a bit of a story. Now you have my attention. So let me see. There are more comments right here. When a debate is lost, insults become the tool of the loser. Is that really Socrates? Is that? I mean Socrates. Is that really Socrates? I did not know that. That expression, by the way, gets taken in a couple different ways. And in the world of the law, it is when you have the facts in a case, pound the facts. When you have the law in the case, pound the law. And when you have nothing, pound the table. That's the same exact, Kelly, kind of thing that you're going for right there. She also believes that it is Socrates. Is right. Socrates, Bill and Ted, Excellent Adventure. Seriously, producer Landon, they don't know their Bill and Ted. They don't know their Bill and Ted. You've only seen bits and pieces of it, producer Landon? How old are you, Landon? You turn 23 next month. Oh, good Lord. We got to have a party for Landon now. We got to send a cake. Something like that. Oh, guys, don't forget, how much time do we have left, producer Landon? No problem there. Don't forget, guys, Understanding the Election in 3 bourbons. That's November 14th. Tickets are going to sell out today. I'm telling you, they're going to sell out today. Get your tickets right now. Bourbon, food, laughs, a great time. We're going to break down the election November 14th, Fishers, Indiana. Tickets.tonykatz.com. Tickets.tonykatz.com. I'll put them right there. Tickets.tonykatz.com. We're going to get back to the radio show. And this story out of Colorado, nutty. Absolutely nutty. We'll get to that. Jenna Griswold is her name. And you're like, I know that name. I know that name. How do I know that name? Jenna Griswold is the Secretary of State of Colorado. And Jenna Griswold is the one who attempted to get Trump off the ballot. Tony Katz today. Great to be with you. Jenna Griswold is clearly incapable and incompetent. I say this without any type of hesitation. Issues going back to 2022, issues that she has had before, and now this headline right here. Colorado publishes voting system passwords in major error. It was a major error, like a major award. It was a major error. They were accessible via a hidden tab in a publicly available spreadsheet. Got removed on October 24th after the error was discovered. And they say that it was inadvertent and it has not affected the election process. This does not pose an immediate security threat to Colorado's elections, nor will it impact how ballots are counted. They seem to have a lot of issues. They seem to have a lot of problems, and it always seems to be people who were elected solely for their political narrative and not for their skill set. We've seen this take place, like, for example, in the Secret Service. Is there any question that the former director of the Secret Service, Kim Cheadle, was put into position for a political, something that was politically expedient and not for her skill set? She doesn't have a skill set. She never had a skill set. She was never capable, never competent. If you were more interested in how many women were hired versus whether or not the protectee, regardless of who the protectee is, had the proper protection, you're not serious about your task. If you can't put a sniper on a roof because the roof is slopey, well, then you're not a serious person. And there has to be an entire cleaning of house there, as we have seen the documentation show, like the reports and everything else. You elected somebody because she was the proper pusher of the narrative, not because you had anybody competent. Now, as much as I despise all this stuff, like the ballot job box is set on fire in Oregon and Washington State. I will get to that. Remind me to get to that. I hate early voting. I'm really opposed, except you have to do it. You got to do it like they do it, and I'll explain that. Meanwhile, GDP talk, that's next. I'm Tony Katz. Guys, we will take the quick break, and we will be right back with Dr. Matt Will, economist at the University of Indianapolis. I got this for you right here. We're done with the music. I didn't need to do that anymore. See that right there? That's Dr. Matt Will, economist at the University of Indianapolis. We're going to get live with him on radio in a minute. How you doing, Doc?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Anybody ever call you Doc?
I get called a lot of things. Let's just say that's one of the more polite ones.
That's nothing. Did you see the comment I got from Todd right here? How about that? How about that right there? That's Todd. Todd is like not happy with me. I'm the reason.
Well, maybe he should see a therapist. Maybe he's got some anger issues he's got to work out.
Wait a second. That's exactly what I said. I said those exact words. Good gosh. So I was grabbing this for you, sir. Economist at University of Indianapolis. This was from CNBC. I was getting that screenshot. Hold on one second. And it was about the GDP numbers. And I have a different take than others. 1 minute, producer Landon. I hear you. That right there. That's what we're talking about, right? That the economy grew at a 2.8% in the third quarter, which is less than expected. But if you were to take a look at news reports out there, everyone will tell you this is the greatest thing ever. So this is what we're going to be getting into with Dr. Matt Will on the X, by the way, on the Twitter is Dr. Matt Will. Right there is where you'll find them. So I'll come to you in about a minute, sir. Just kick back, relax, smoke them if you got them. And for the record, I actually do have them. I'm here to help. That's right. You're not a cigar guy.
I'm not. The only thing imperfect about you is the cigars. Everything else I'm a fan of.
I will jump through the screen and I will hurt you something fierce.
Why do you think I'm on the south side of Indianapolis and you're on the north side? I got to keep my distance.
Right. You stay right there. We'll be right back with you. I love him for his economic mind, but my God, he needs some help, doesn't he? Doesn't he right there? That's coming up in just a minute. Tell your friends to get on the stream. Glad you guys are here. The more the merrier. Comments too. Even from you, Todd. When I saw the number come across that GDP was 2.8%, I said, well, that's not terrible. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's not where you'd want to be, right? If you think of gross domestic product and you say, man, I want to be at like 5%, with all due respect, you're not ready for what 5% means. That is a massive growth rate number in a nation like ours with the level of output that we do. 2.8. You've got nations in recession. You've got inflation. That's not terrible, but expectation was 3.1. And if expectation is 3.1%, that means we grew less than expected. That means from a political point of view, isn't really an argument that the Harris team can utilize to their advantage. But maybe not everything should be seen from the political point of view. Tony Katz, did I say hello? Tony Katz today. Find everything at TonyKatz.com. Dr. Matt Will joins us right now, economist at the University of Indianapolis. Your point to me, as we were texting earlier, is that this isn't a bad report. My argument is if you're expecting 3.1 and you're under 3, I don't think it's a celebratory report. Talk to me about what it is you saw in this GDP report and what you make of it.
Well, in my opinion, it's a good report. It's not a great report, but it's good. And I'll tell you why it's good. There is spending for durable goods. There's spending for equipment, 11% increase in spending for equipment by companies for investing purposes. That's a good number. The consumer is spending 8% more. That's a good number. So I see a lot of good parts, but there's some nervous parts in here as well. You know, federal spending on national defense was up 15%. That's a massive increase. Total overall federal spending up 10%. These are not good indicators. And even the good parts, the durable goods, the equipment, I've got to tell everybody, there's nothing to be proud of in that. While we like the number, it's in spite of this administration. Remember, this administration is going after businesses that are successful. They want to increase taxes. They want to increase regulation. And I got a theory, Tony, I have a theory that a lot of this investment that's going on, this 11% increase, is companies trying to get ahead of a possible Harris term. They want to get their investments in now because just 2 quarters ago, investment was negative. So you tell me, well, I should say zero. It was zero. So what's happening? They're trying to get their investment in now before the possible regulatory and tax hits that could occur if she wins.
So that's a fear argument, right? They're making an argument that Kamala Harris is going to be worse than Joe Biden, as opposed to going along the same course as Joe Biden. So we'd have to take a look back at the last 4 years, Dr. Will, and say, what has been the regulatory increase in this Biden administration, and how has it affected GDP overall?
Well, it's been dramatically increased. And now, if you don't mind, I'd like to draw a comparison. You know, she says she's going to be better than Trump. Well, we have years of Trump and we have years of Biden-Harris. We can compare the two. And I'd like to compare them. I actually did a little bit of research on this. I did a little study, and I took the 36 best months pre-COVID of Trump. I took the 36 best months post-COVID of Biden-Harris, and I put them side by side. I also threw in a little of Obama data at the same time. And what I found in 11 categories that I found, 10 of them, the Trump era did better than the Biden-Harris, even in GDP. The average GDP pre-COVID for Trump was 2.9%, and for Harris, it's 2.7. They're close, but Trump is better. And I could give you a list of categories, and I'd love to talk about them.
Talking to Dr. Matt Will, economist at the University of Indianapolis. First, can we make apples to apples comparisons? Because we have two things at play. First, you can't dismiss that COVID took place. And it's the same exact argument as when people say, well, Trump lost all these manufacturing jobs. No, we shut down employers. To say Trump lost manufacturing jobs is a lie. There are even people in leftist media who admit to this, and then Nancy Pelosi screams at them, you may want to support Donald Trump. She does this right there. She puts her hand there. You may want to support Donald Trump. And she chastises Katie Tur and a host of others. But we can't deny that that's real. In that same breath, don't we have to take a look and ask ourselves if there's an economic reality that COVID has engaged a level of depression of the economy, and say that there's reasons why China and others aren't manufacturing to their capability? And then we have to follow that up with, well, is that China or is that inflation because they did too much spending just like the United States did too much spending?
Well, I agree with you. And that's why when I did my research, what I did is I tried to remove all the COVID information. You're right. You can't eliminate it all. It's there. But I took out the COVID times. I looked at those first 36 months of Trump and the most recent 36 months of Biden-Harris. So I did my best to remove it. Tony, you can't remove it all, but you can remove most of it, and you can do your best to be objective. And the only category where the Biden-Harris administration has done better was in the unemployment rate. Their average has been 3.8%, where the unemployment rate under Trump average was 4.1.
And I would argue, I'm going to interrupt. I would argue that that's unfair, because that doesn't take into account labor participation rate. Did I beat you to it? Tell me, did I get my degree in economics today? Am I the guy?
Yes, you beat me to the next step. which is, even this piece of good news is probably the result of the fact that we have a lower participation rate. We have less people in the economy looking for employment. So that's what caused the unemployment rate to be lower. So, but I'm trying to be objective. I'm trying to just say, here's the facts. Here's 11 pieces of data. But Harris wins on one, Trump wins on the other 10.
Talking to Dr. Matt Will, economist at the University of Indianapolis. Now take us through what it is we see here. This GDP of 2.8, you say that there are good factors here. You then qualify that by making, I think, a pretty solid kind of observation, one that I think requires thought, which is how many of these moves, especially when you talk about investments into, we weren't saying manufacturing, durable goods is the exact terminology you used, was to get ahead of what it is a possible Harris regime might do. There's a real interesting indicator in there on the economics that says that Wall Street isn't sold that Trump's a winner, They're not sold on the idea that Trump is definitely going to win this election, even though you can take a look at poly markets and some other betting sites that certainly shows Trump having massive advantage, and certainly he has an advantage in the vast majority of the battleground states, sans Michigan right now, which I think is a little bit peculiar, and some other data. So the market isn't actually sure when we take a look at durable goods. Is there anything else in this report, in this GDP, that makes you say we are on an upswing, or we have bigger problems ahead, maybe caused by us, maybe caused by influence from others like China?
I'm not going to say upswing. I don't want to say that phrase. I'm going to go back to my theory, and that is that Wall Street's trying to get ahead of a possible Harris administration, because we see this diversion of expenditures into durable goods out of residential. For the second quarter in a row, residential spending has dropped. In this quarter, it was 5% drop. To me, that's a much more important indicator. And I go back to this corporate spending. Corporations have dramatically picked up their investment spending in hard equipment over these last 2 quarters. And I believe it is in anticipation of a possible Harris move, because they know they're going to be punished. Remember when Obama took over and he increased taxes, he did it retroactively. He set a precedent of tax increases that were retroactive to the beginning of the year. So they're not going to wait around and see what happens in her second year. They're trying to get ahead of that now. And I believe that dramatic change from 0 to 11% is people rushing to the gate to make their investments now. I sincerely believe that.
So I should look at this GDP as temporary, or maybe a better term is forced. People's hands were forced, and they were forced into some capital expenditures that won't come in the next 3 quarters. That would mean if Harris is elected, because you're arguing that it's the hedge against Harris, we're looking at GDPs far less than where we're at now at 2.8.
In fact, let me add to that. It's not just a hedge against Harris. Look at the largest increase in the GDP report. National defense spending, 15%. Wow, a 15%. And that is primarily Ukraine spending. So we see this massive increase in Ukraine spending that occurred this quarter, which bumped up the GDP. So your comparison about 2.8 to 3.1, that's more important, because if it weren't for dumping this money into Ukraine,
right,
it would be even lower than 2.8.
All right. So that's a part 2 take. Certainly. So why am I seeing news outlets talk about this being robust when the answer is it isn't awful? And I agree with that. But the even Wall Street thought it was going to be 3.1. They've got to be disappointed in seeing it come this way. And they have to be reading the tea leaves saying, if this is 15% defense spend, and I favor defense spending on the right stuff, it gets worse from here, because a Harris administration isn't going to be building new ships, even though we desperately need them.
Wait, okay. I'm sorry to do this to you, Tony, but the mainstream media is reporting robust when it's not robust.
Yeah, I know you're shocked.
Okay. I mean,
you look shocked. I'm looking at you right now and you're like,
let's compare it. The GDP under Trump was higher than the GDP growth under Harris and Biden. The inflation is lower under Trump than it was under Harris Biden. The household income was higher. In 4 years ago, it was, or 3.5 years ago, it was higher than it is now. Clearly the media is trying to create a narrative. And there's nothing wrong with them doing it if they were just honest about it and said, look, we're editorialists. We support Harris.
Honest about it would be spectacular. Talking to Dr. Matt Will, economist at the University of Indianapolis. Let me ask you a China question, because 2 things. First, there was a report that Chinese real estate is stabilizing, although its future will be subdued. So we're talking about Evergrande, we're talking about Evergreen, Countrywide. They built all of these apartment complexes, all of these ghost cities. Nobody lives in them. And it was to create jobs in the communist regime. And people who invested in these things, we're talking about losses into the 50, 60, 70, $80 billion range. And it will be more if China doesn't prop them up. But then there was a part 2, that steel in China is down. They're in the red, not the black. And that was to me a signal of they really aren't doing production. They really aren't manufacturing anything, and they can't sell the steel to themselves. Where in 60 seconds, where is China's economy going, and how does it affect us and what we buy?
Well, first of all, it's in a recession. They won't admit it, but all the data shows that it is. The price of steel declining is exactly another indicator of recession. The stabilizing of the housing market is bogus. Remember, just 5 years ago, they had 120 million per person surplus in housing, and they're still building. And remember, this week, they announced a $1.2 trillion stimulus package. They're desperate.
Wait, they did what?
China announced a $1.2 trillion stimulus package for their economy. They just announced that.
Forgive me, you announced that in a communist nation? You don't just do the giveaway? It was announced as like a what? Like a program?
Yes, exactly. And the irony is that they're not giving it directly to the people. It's going to be loans mostly to construction companies to build more Go cities. I think that answers your question.
Why, yes. Why, yes. Dr. Matt Will, economist, University of Indianapolis. Stay right there if you would, sir. Find everything at TonyKatz.com. This is Tony Katz Today. Let me bring Dr. Will back on. You do that like a champ, sir. As always, this is a question from All MC. If elected, will Trump need to spend more money to decrease the economy? He mentioned that when he was previously in office. I don't know how I would decipher that. Spend more to kind of slow the economy up. That's not necessarily how that would go. But if you were advising Dr. Will, Trump takes office, how do you advise him to course correct in these economic conditions?
Well, I'm going to look it up right now. On the Wall Street Journal, they had a report today about the individual who's probably going to be his Treasury Secretary.
That would be Elon Musk.
Well, no.
Also Defense Secretary, Elon Musk.
John Paulson.
Education Secretary, Elon Musk. He's just got Elon for everything.
No, but it's a good point, because actually John Paulson, who's the guy who has been considered as the insider for the job, was just talking about the fact that he would tap into Elon Musk.
Okay, hold on. John Paulson, not Hank Paulson.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Hank Paulson brought us the bailouts.
Yes, he did.
Wait.
Yes.
Oh, I swear to you, I thought I was going to have a heart attack.
Different Paulson.
He should change his name immediately.
But this Paulson, he wants to work with Elon Musk to eliminate the green subsidies, roll back the CHIPS Act, roll back some of the spending on the Green New Deal. He's actually got some really good ideas, and he says he will be able to significantly cut government spending.
He believes that he can cut spending with Elon Musk by $2 trillion. That's the number they're bandying about.
Who am I to argue? I'd like to see the results. All I know is this: Elon Musk tends to do what he says.
You're not going to get an argument from me. Yeah, I've seen. They have Jared Bernstein. I'll take Elon Musk and see what we get. Dr. Matt Will, follow him on the Twitter X, Dr. Matt Will, WILL, Dr. Matt Will. Good to see you, sir.
Take care.
Later. There he goes off into the wild blue yonder. There it is. I do have. Do I have the story? I may have the worst story you have ever heard in your entire life. Producer Landon, how much time we got? Oh, well, we've got time. Fantastic. That will allow everybody to take a quick stretch. Stay right here, guys. We have a lot to get to. I'm glad you're here. Be right back. That's one of my favorite ones right there. We are getting back to the show right here. Oh, the story is going to make you cry. It's going to make you cry. Guaranteed it. If you like puppies. All right, this has nothing to do with puppies, but I'll tell you the story anyway. It's coming up now. There's a lawsuit for everything, and everything has a lawsuit. And there are some lawsuits I think you and I could clearly and easily agree with and be like, you know what? This is good. These people should be sued. They did something wrong. They did something terrible. And then there are lawsuits like this is madness. Like, it's like when you sue McDonald's because the coffee is too hot. Rest assured that the rest of us, we hate you. We hate you, and we think that it's despicable what you're doing. But when you see this, Subway shops accused of shorting customers on meat in sandwiches. Well, we need to get to the bottom of this immediately. Tony Katz today, Fox Business with the story. It's a lawsuit that claims the chain materially overstates the amount of meat in visual ads for sandwiches. You telling me that in an ad that shows up on your video screen, it might not represent the amount of meat in the actual sandwich itself? You mean they might exaggerate? I, for one, am shocked. I am shocked. I am appalled, nay, flabbergasted. I honestly believe that we should immediately charge these people with pitchforks and force them to defend themselves with nothing but loaves of Italian bread until they submit and give us all the good meats. I don't know what this is. I thought the issue was like there was no tuna in their tuna. Do you remember that story? There's no discernible tuna in their tuna fish. Am I the only one who remembers that story? Oh, that was a big story. That story came after Jared. Now the Jared story and the child porn, everything else. I was, that case happened in Indianapolis. I live in the Indianapolis area, on the air in Indianapolis. I couldn't cover the story. Like Port's cover, I'd be like, that's all the newsroom. It was too sick and too twisted to cover. I don't have that skill set. What the guys in the newsroom did was stunning. As for Subway shorting you on meat, what'd you expect? I'm Tony Katz. I guess you could expect meat. I guess that could be expected. Glad you guys are here. Glad you were part of the show. And Austin, I'm not saying no, man. Elon absolutely trimmed the fat at Twitter. Cut 80% of the workforce, and people said, you can't operate this with that few people. And he said, okay, and did. It's a great example. So the part about Elon that I think works for Americans is that here's what the chattering class of elites tells you. And here's people saying and showing you're wrong. And you realize that the elite chattering class is only in the business of ensuring they get to stay part of the elite chattering class because that's where the money is. The actual productivity is meaningless to them. This is a great a story about people like Bill Kristol. Remember, he was a conservative, and he was the leader of conservatives, and he was the definition of conservatism. And then Trump came into being. He said, you can't vote for Donald Trump. And people said, we're going to vote for this guy. He said, but I'm conservatism. And then people said, yawn. And they voted for Trump. By the way, you have to admit my hand puppets are amongst the best hand puppets. So I'm just not so sure I'm willing to put Elon Musk in charge. Input, yes. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm being a little too harsh on the man. I think that success in one place is not a success in all places, and you got to ease your way into it. Recommendations. Let's try some of the recommendations, see how they work, and then build out. But you're never going to get me opposed to wholesale reductions. It's like the swamp. I want the swamp drained. I don't want to hear anything about it. I want people fired out of state, fired out of defense, fired out of name the place. I want them gone. First of all, do it with less people. And secondly, do away with those people in the elite chattering class who keep trying to tell us what our safety is and how we have to do things. You have to change some dynamics if you want a different result. Now, there's a question as to whether you really want a different result. That's another story for another day. Glad you guys are here. I appreciate it. Don't forget to get your tickets right now. Tickets.tonykatz.com. Understanding the election in 3 bourbons. It will sell out today. We're going to discuss the election, the best post-election party there will be in America. We've got bourbon, we've got food, we've got cigars, a great time, a ton of laughs. You're going to have a ball. Tickets.tonykatz.com. November 14th, Fishers, Indiana. Tickets.tonykatz.com. Don't forget to like and subscribe on YouTube and on X at Tony Katz. Really do appreciate you guys being here and being part of this. More live streaming is coming. Why not? It's fun. You guys are great. I really do appreciate it. Can't thank you enough. I'll catch you next time. Take care.